The owners of ABM Ministries, a Christian boarding school in Missouri, have been arrested and charged with felony crimes after a thorough investigation by local law enforcement. Larry and Carmen Musgraves were taken into custody following allegations of abuse and reports of children running away from the school. The arrests come after months of inquiry prompted by concerns raised by former students. The charges include first-degree kidnapping, and the investigation is ongoing, with authorities expecting more charges as additional alleged victims come forward. The incidents at ABM Ministries add to a string of controversies surrounding religious boarding schools in Missouri, prompting calls for stricter oversight of such facilities. This story is from AP News by Jim Salter on March 4th, 2024. Now, I've got a lot of feelings about this.
What? Are you sure?
One or two feelings, maybe three if I really dig deep inside. But I'm passing to Scott because I'm just going to fucking rant because this makes me so sick to my fucking stomach. I just need to swallow some vomit for a while Scott talks.
I'm going to yield all my time to Jason. I want to hear it. No, I'm just kidding. So what we see here happening, though, is something that comes up way too often, and that is unwarranted trust, just because they're religious. We have individuals and even governments that put their trust in a religious organization, perhaps where it might not be deserved, right? And like I said, not just individuals, but also the government. They mentioned in the story here that prior to a new state law, the Missouri state law in 2021, there was, quote, virtually no oversight for private religious schools. And that's just blind trust. That's the failure of this kind of blind trust. These families are raised to trust without questioning their religious leaders, their religious schools, their religious organizations, and that we can see time and time again that runs into problems. We see child abuse, sexual abuse, torture, kidnapping, even murder happening, being occurred by these trusted religious leaders, and what are we teaching our kids here? What are we teaching our kids? Shouldn't this trust be earned rather than just granted whole cloth? It's an old cliche. Religion is a lot like the user agreement at the end of your, when you get your iPhone, you just scroll to the bottom, you check okay, right? I'm a Christian. I got to check this okay. I'm whatever religion. I'm a Muslim. I'm a Hindu, whatever that's coming from our religious leaders. Check okay and move on. Speaking of that law, I found another apnews.com article related to this law, and here's what they had to say about the law at that time. It's a 2021 law. Missouri's new law sets minimum health and safety requirements for boarding schools, which still don't have to be licensed. The law mandates background checks for employees, requires adequate food, clothing, and medical care for students, and says parents must be allowed access to their children at any time without prior notice. My first thought is, those are great. That's a great baseline regulation. But my second thought, I see you shaking your head, Jason. That's like the bare minimum, right? Is that what we're striving for? Is the bare minimum? What were they doing before this? It seems like they were just inviting opportunities for this type of abuse to happen. And, that's not just, that's downright negligence. That's criminal negligence. If they're refusing to regulate schools where kids are going to live, they're living there their whole time there. It's frustrating. It's frustrating. Here is another interesting quote regarding that new law. James Clydens, who taught math at Agape, is one of the other schools involved in a different lawsuit, who taught math at Agape from 2012 to 2015, said he left after witnessing abuses so concerning that his wife contacted federal, state, and local authorities. None would investigate, he said. I'm for religious liberty. I'm a pastor. This is him talking. But at this point, we're talking about children's well-being. Clydens, who now leads a Baptist church in Maryland, said. And again, I think that's a great perspective. Notice that he's not only prioritizing the safety of the children, but he's also not making that assumption that they should be trusted just because they're religious. So you got to give him props for that. But notice we also said in there, none would investigate. None would investigate. And I think that's where this problem comes into play. We need to build trust through transparent accountability, through self-criticism, show me the money, put up or shut up, right? If these institutions are asking for the for the public to trust them, right? That's what they're asking for. Trust us with your children. Trust us with the future of our youth. If you want that trust, you have to earn it. And to earn it, you need to be accountable. You need to be open. You need to be investigable. Is that a word? Investigable. You need to be willing to put up with investigation. You shouldn't be pushing back at this kind of thing. And so really that sentence really bugged me. None would investigate. And I think that kind of summarizes the whole problem with this thing. Infidel, what do you think about that?
One thing that I found interesting is that more than one school has moved to Missouri because of their lax laws.
They got their niche market, right?
Yes. And I couldn't help but think that I remember, and I don't remember who said it, but they asked, why do you rob banks? Because that's where the money's at. And when it comes down to, if you're looking to take advantage of children, go to where there's no oversight. Go to where there's no one that's going to be in the way of you doing terrible things to those children. So the fact that this school itself used to be co-ed until one of their former principals got caught sexually assaulting a young girl. So they ended up paying $750,000 fine and went ahead and fixed their problem by, well, we'll just have boys now. That doesn't fix anything. That's not even a Band-Aid. But you mentioned that the bare minimum, what they're looking at is, okay, we're going to hold this exception. And when it comes down to it, 15 different states, maybe 16, depending on the count, have religious exemptions for daycare centers and residential academies, as these fall under. They agree to follow the most basic of health and safety requirements. And even then, there's no oversight. There's nothing really, as in the regular, investigations or regular people coming in and making sure you're living up to those. It's just a matter of, okay, we take it your word, because once again, we see, like we've seen in other stories with chaplains in schools and things of this nature, there's an expectation of trust on so many people that these are good religious people. We can trust them.
Nope.
One thing that I found really interesting is someone was talking about this, Noel was their last name, and they were talking about how the 2003 Prison Rape Elimination Act mandates that prisoners get confidentiality to report incidents of sexual assault. We're not even giving these children, as they said, to quote them, they don't even have the guarantees we give adult convicts. Yep. These children haven't been convicted of anything. Now, I'm not saying that people in prisons shouldn't have those rights. They absolutely should. But I think it's a very valid point. Shouldn't children at least get the basic respect and rights that we give a convicted prisoner who has been through a court of law and been convicted, rightfully or wrongfully? But, that doesn't even cover, we still have boarding schools with indigenous children, essentially the goal to make them good white Christian into assimilated into good white Christian American society. All of this is completely repulsive, but let's not say anything because they're good Christians. And this is exactly how this results. That's what makes it so unacceptable.
Being a victim of sexual assault by a youth pastor, this really hits home, and given the track record of, private Christian institutions, it sickens me to admit, again, I'm not surprised in the least. These places are fucking breeding grounds for this type of behavior. I can only compare my feelings now to, how I feel about when I hear about another mass shooting. It's like, what do you expect? We have these quote institutions with little to no fucking supervision that are given that automatic good guy pass that both of y'all have been talking about. I'm sure, which Richard's probably going to talk about too. And they're labeled Christian. We see that same halo effect. We saw that happen with serial killers in the 60s and 70s. Saw that happen with Bundy, with Gacy and Rader. Good, clean cut, well-to-do Christian men. The guy who assaulted me and finally got caught for assaulting an 11-year-old had that same thing. It's just disgusting. It would make sense to me that a real predator would do their best to blend in, look harmless, look normal. I mean, how good of a predator would I make? You can spot me a fucking mile away. But if you hide behind a label in an area of the country where everyone else is hiding behind that label and benefiting off of it, I mean, shit, just fuck these people, right? Sadly, due to their demographics and their religious leanings, we see time and time again that these people get away with barely even a slap on the wrist. I mean, it wasn't even investigated. The guy, like I said, the guy who assaulted me finally got caught assaulting an 11-year-old boy. He was only given 5 years of probation. You know, what do you expect? Upper middle class, white male, Christian, no tattoos, clean cut, straight. You know, I don't support the death penalty, and just due to the amount of flaws. But in a perfect world, for people like this who prey on children and prey on people's conditioning to accept and as Christians as good people automatically, you know, I might take like the, you know, I can't say what I want to say. I feel like things should be a little stiffer maybe. And these things should be taken a little more serious. But the problem is that when you have so many people behaving the same way, once you start investigating one group of people, that investigation is going to spill over. I use this example a lot, and I'll pass it over to Richard. It's when you're at a bar and you're telling your lies and you're drinking your drinks and you're telling your lies, no one's going to challenge your lies because they're telling lies too. So if you say your lies and they challenge your lies, you're going to start challenging their lies. So they're going to accept your lies. I'm going to accept my lies. And we're just going to keep on fucking bullshitting and drinking our drinks and benefiting and doing whatever. I mean, this is what happens. This is why we see the people who prosecute and in the legal system, they're all in the same demographics, same age range, same belief system. So of course they're not going to pursue these people to the extent that they need to be pursued. Because once they start pursuing them, people are going to find out that they're somehow, some way wrapped up in this shit too. And we see it time and time and time again with child prostitution rings, with abuse stuff, with this time and time again, where the cops, where teachers, where fucking people in power, administrators are the ones perpetuating this shit. So I don't know. I could rant on this forever. I was a victim of this stuff. I know people have been a victim of this stuff. It disgusts me. And I hate that fucking halo effect that's given to people where they can just literally slip into your life, abuse you, and then they're given a pass for doing it. So, Richard, how do you feel about this, man?
Well, to me, crimes against young people are the worst because, first of all, they have no power to defend themselves generally. Yeah. They don't vote, so politicians don't care. You know, sometimes their parents don't care. Sometimes their parents don't know. You know, I hope that the Musgraves get the maximum sentence. I hope that those kids that got abused get a good tort lawyer and sue the crap out of these people. And maybe, just maybe, if they spend some time in jail and maybe they lose all their money, other people go away. Maybe we need to be a little better. The thing that gets missed in all of this, which is that if they cut a kid's leg off, they get 20 years. But they sexually abuse a kid, and it emotionally cuts their emotions off for the rest of their life in some respect. Yep. And that doesn't get accounted for. You know, I know this real well because of what my wife does for a living, and people that are treated that way, you know, can have problems trusting. They can have problems with confidence. They can have all kinds of problems, and it's kind of ignored. Like, you know, well, you can't see it, so it's not really there, and so the harm that's done to these kids is not treated as a serious harm. And like Jason said, oftentimes it's done by people who are mirror images of the people who are supposed to be enforcing this. So yep. They look at him, they go, "Oh, that's my next door neighbor. I can't throw him in jail for too long. Give him a year. Okay, fine." You know, that's the problem. But we need, I mean, there's no reason. Well, somebody mentioned about investigating. I don't know if it was Scott or it was Infidel. If you got nothing to hide, you're taking care of kids and you've got nothing to hide, you should be glad to have somebody come in and investigate, to be able to pat you on the back when they leave and say, "God, everything in your toilets are clean, your kitchen's clean. I've talked to your kids, none of them are unhappy, nobody's got bruises." You know, you get a clean bill of health. But if you don't want to be investigated, I'd be immediately suspicious.
Yeah, definitely. I would even take it a step further, and I would say that if you care about well-being of children, you should invite that kind of transparent. You should invite that kind of investigation. You should have your doors wide open and say, "Please come in." Okay, there's not only a trust problem here, but there's also an image issue here too. You know, if you want people to send their children to your school, you now need to make effort. You now need to go the extra mile to demonstrate that you're trustworthy. But so question for the panel here. Do you see this as an unforgivable sin? Is this proof that this type of private religious boarding school is irredeemable? Or do you think that this type of education has some kind of place in the American system or even the worldwide system? Infidel, what are your thoughts there? Is this an irredeemable sin, unforgivable sin, or is there hope?
Well, overlooking the sin part, since I don't actually believe it, but I know what you're saying.
To borrow a phrase, right? To borrow a phrase.
Absolutely. I think it is absolutely unforgivable because, as Richard alluded to, it's important that we remember that the damage that's done is not something that's necessarily you can see from the outside. And it's something far more insidious because you can heal from a physical wound far easier than you can a psychological one, even more so when it's one that you're told to repress in so many ways. You're just piling damage upon top of damage. So I don't really think there's a place for this type of education in our system, but I did wanted to touch on one thing really quick, and that is Jason mentioned standing out, tattoos, the way he looks, and I completely agree because we hear people who look clean cut and look exactly like what people want to think of as acceptability, and they rail against drag queens and LGBTQ. And look, I'll promise you this. If you want access to people's children, you don't look like Jason. You're making a mistake. You're going to be ineffective. You don't look like me. You don't look like a lot of people. You're better off putting that nice little suit and tie on and cutting that hair the right way and saying the right things. And that's what these people do time and again. And I don't think there's any room in our society for that type of behavior.
Yeah, and one other thing they put on is those little white collars.
Yep.
You know,
Right.
It says, I am here from God. You have to do what I tell you.
Yep.
You know, just
Right,
think of
that's
all the
almost
Catholic.
like a badge.
Yeah, think of all the Catholic choir boys that heard that line
Right.
over the years, thousands
So then,
and
Richard,
thousands
do you
and thousands.
agree with Infidel then? Do you think that this is a quote unquote unforgivable sin here? Or do you think that there's a place for this type of education?
Well, it's a two-part question. I think what they do is unforgivable. I think if you're going to have those kind of situations, there has to be very strict monitoring. There has to be, constant checking, and they need to run background and psychological tests on the people that are running the place. You want to make sure that they're sane, calm, caring people. If you have that kind of a group doing it, you're not going to have a problem. But if you don't have any of those controls, then as Infidel said, the cockroaches will put on their coat and tie and sneak in and do damage. And that's the problem. Kids need to be protected. They are
Jason,
our future.
Jason, do you agree then? They've struck out already this, and I'm not talking about these individuals. I'm talking about this as an educational institution, as a type of education. Is there a role for a religious boarding school, or did these people blow it, for the whole thing?
I'm probably gonna have an unpopular opinion. Again, being an American, if you follow the laws and you do them properly and you play the game, you can open whatever business is legally allowed. You have the right to practice whatever belief system you want to believe, and people can pay you privately for it. I think the shit that's what we should be pissed about is the lack of oversight. We should be pissed about the lack of fucking rules. We should be pissed about the lack of assessment of people, psychological assessment. I'm an inspector. I inspect million and billion dollar job sites for oil companies. I do quality inspection. I go in there, literally climb through things and inspect inch by inch and x-rays. And I mean, I'm trying to find shit wrong. And if they don't let me in the fucking door whenever I want to, or stop work whenever I fucking want to, there's a big problem. And that's a red flag. And generally that ends up with an audit and NCRs and a lot of problems. So that's a red flag to me. When somebody says you can't inspect this shit whenever you fucking want to, then
Right.
no. But the problem is whenever you have a system that enables that, somebody's making money off of this. Somebody's making money off of these lax rules. And there's a trickle up, trickle down. There's a thing going on. There's a cycle. There's a circle of shit going on that if they dig deeper, and the reason there's a lack of investigation is because somebody's fucking making money off of this. I bet you what I made today, that somebody's making money off of the lax involvement and the lax amount of investigation. And somebody's pockets are getting lined and somebody's interests are getting met and somebody's doing whatever they want to get and somebody's making fucking money, whether it's a licensing body, whether it's the certification bodies, whether it's a whole group of people, somebody's making fucking money. So ultimately, that's what this is about. It's a capitalistic fucking thing that's going on. So that's what we have to look at. Where's the revenue going? Why is it making it? Why is there a lack of oversight? Yeah, fuck these people. They're fucking pieces of shit. And in a perfect world, I would love that there would be religious, because I'm not going to lie. Yeah, I mean, I support people's right to believe whatever they want to believe as long as it doesn't infringe on my rights and harm people. So in a perfect world, there would be whatever shitty private institution they wanted to fucking own, but it would have monthly investigations. We see the same problem with private prisons. They're always worse. They're always worse because somebody's making money off of it.
Exactly.
And they're cutting corners. And
Yep.
you're making money off of numbers and you abuse people and you starve them. It's disgusting. So that's all I'm seeing. And those are generally in very conservative Christian states too, where you see the majority of the private prisons. So it's repulsive to me. This is just another symptom of capitalism run rampant with an authoritarian backbone that's supported by a religion that has an authoritarian backbone, and where people just like, oh, you're a Christian, I fucking trust you. So, and then somebody's making money. We just got to call it out for what it is. It's a lack of oversight, a lack of accountability, and disgusting people just doing what they fucking do and just be disgusting and abuse children. And that part doesn't surprise me. Being somebody who was abused, knowing people who were abused, and seeing the punishment of the people who abused us is, it's par for the course. You know,
Right.
I don't know. I don't know. I was to shoot it back to you, Scott. It just makes me sick.
Yeah, it's the same thing. Private prisons, private healthcare too, private educational institutions like this. It's all about the money, right? It's all about the money. Whenever you put somebody's well-being on a scale with somebody's financial well-being on the other end of the scale, we know which way this is going to tip. You know, once people start getting those paychecks, then it's easy to dismiss, the collateral damage, right?
Of course, man.
I want us to check ourselves for a second here, though. I want to check ourselves. I think it's important that we reflect our, accountability back on ourselves. I found a 2014 peer-reviewed study on child sexual abuse in Roman Catholic, Protestant, and secular education institutions. The researchers found that, quote, based on the testimonials of victims of child abuse in our sample, it appears that factors common to all institutions, such as group cohesion, hierarchical power structures and dependence, and credibility bias in favor of authority figures, are conducive to the occurrence of repeated sexual abuse over long periods of time, regardless of religious affiliation.
That's what I'm saying about authoritarianism. That's what I'm saying about that.
Exactly.
Whenever you bow to an authority figure and you've been primed to do that, yes, that's what's going to happen. You freeze
that's
up.
that
You have
credibility bias, right?
Yeah.
That's that credibility bias. Believe these people for no reason, right? But as a group here, we're talking about the religious aspect. That's what the nonprofits we do. We view things. We view these news stories from a secular humanist perspective, right? Are we barking up the wrong tree by focusing on religion, the religious aspects of these stories? Infidel.
I don't know of a state in our union that would allow a secular school to go as unregulated as we find in at least a third of the states in our country. So while I know there's a problem anywhere you have children, you're going to find people who flock to that because that's what they're looking to take advantage of. So it's a danger in secular, religious, or any other organization like that. But I will say, I don't think that secular organizations are going to get quite the same pass that we see time and time again in places like religious schools in general, boarding schools in this particular case, and even more so in places like Missouri, where it's pretty much hands off. Don't touch the church. Don't touch the church's boarding school. Let them do their thing. And I think that that's something that we wouldn't allow happen in secular organizations. Not just us as secular people, but the government itself doesn't give that by.
So you're saying that the religious aspect gives like a back door kind of, right? A way around the, if there are safeguards in place, this is just a way to circumvent those. Is that what you're saying?
They literally write in exemptions for religious organizations for this type of thing. So
it's not even a back door. It's just like a key to the front door.
Okay. Yeah, it's like, come on in, let's do this thing. And that's what makes it even more disgusting, because the truth is if a child's being taken advantage of and abused, it's not going to make them feel better what the person believes and what church they do or don't go to. But we are handing, as you said, using your analogy, we're handing them the keys. We're saying, here, go ahead and do your thing. And that makes it that much worse, not for the kid, but for the fact of our failure as a society to protect that child.
Richard, what do you think? Are we being fair here?
There's a bottom line here that I think we need to remember about the difference between the secular schools and the religious schools. In our society, there's a general taboo against criticizing other people's religion. That's just there. And, you don't talk about that at the Thanksgiving dinner table. And people take affront if you question their beliefs. So that sets the basis for exactly what Infidel was talking about, of giving them this grace, because it's already there, underwritten in the general society as a whole, that you can't criticize their religious beliefs. That's personal, and that's, it deals with God. So if you have that kind of a basic philosophy running through your society when it comes to running a business, well, if it's a religious business, well, you can't really criticize their religion. It hooks right into that. It sets the stage, because, hey, ask Jason, you go to work, you criticize that building if it's not set up right? I mean, that's just simple. Scientists criticize each other all the time. Lawyers, we criticize you. You don't have the case law right. You're wrong. Every place else, anything is open to analysis, criticism,
every bit of it.
Skepticism, but not religion. And that's where that hook is that sets it up for these kids to get, excuse my expression, screwed over.
Yeah, no, I agree with
Jason,
you.
do you think? Do you agree? Are we being fair, or are we filling a need where other people are afraid to tread?
This is an interesting question. It's had my mind running the whole time. I'm listening to what everybody's saying, but I've also got my mind running. I think the comparison of secular school versus religious school is unfair. For one, I think it's kind of poisoning the well, because no school is ever promoted as a secular school. That's fucking bullshit. These are promoted as religious schools. So anybody saying this is a secular school is shit. Two, I'd like to really look at those where these studies were done and the regions they were done, and if they were religious regions, because like where my kid goes to school right now, it's in Fort Bend County. That is one of the most conservative counties in the whole world. Sure, it's a public school, but we walk in and they have a sign in the public school, "In God We Trust." I mean, I filed complaint. Yeah, what are you going to do, right? So automatically they're primed, "In God We Trust." That's the first thing you see when they walk in a public school. It's a secular school. But all those kids have been primed by authoritarian parents who believe in authoritarian religions, who vote for and we have the most conservative county in the United States, who vote for authoritarian leaders. Of course, they're going to have the same leanings and the same problems that the religious people have, because it's the same shit going on. But so the comparison of religious versus non-religious school, to me, is not a fair comparison. Now, compare private school versus non-religious private school, maybe that's the same, but we see problems in private schools all the time, just due to the fact that they're like people don't watch them. They're under investigated. There's a lot of problems with private school. Plus, and there's other problems we could bitch about as well. But I don't know. I think we just have to look at the community that these things are happening in. We have to look at the bigger thing and what people are primed and what they believe and their voting patterns and their consumption patterns, what media is being consumed. And then we can apply those metrics to what's happening to the children. And you have to look at what happened to them before and family history and blah, blah, blah. I think something like that is really one of those studies. I'd probably have to look into it more. Maybe I'm talking out my ass, but I feel like it's one of those things that's like, see, it's the same. It's like, not really. And yes, what you're seeing is, yeah, it's the same. There's a big problem with this. We need to watch out for this. Authoritarian institutions run by authoritarian people take advantage of children, and they're more easily taken advantage of because they're taught to allow people to take advantage of them. So yeah, that's a big fucking problem. It's we're seeing consistent numbers maybe across the board because consistently people are taking advantage of children, and that's disgusting. You know, I don't know.
So you're saying that you think that religion might be so ingrained in some areas that that it's difficult to control for that, right?
It's not even religion anymore. I'm sorry to cut you off, but it's not even religion anymore. It's culturally acceptable beliefs. A religion is like if you were raised Christian, but then suddenly decided to be Buddhist, like you're doing a religion then. That's not part of your culture. You were never conditioned. You don't think about it. You don't brush your teeth around it. You don't have Macy's parades around it. It's whenever you have a culturally acceptable belief, you can have a region where you have a culturally acceptable belief where like people go to an exorcist like once a week. It's like, I got sick, I need to get a demon out of me, and I need some medicine. It's not a big deal, right? You have cultures that are like that. But then in America, you know, so that's normal. What would be weird for them is if, let's say, they got possessed every day at that point or something. You know, like here, it's that's what I'm saying. So that's a culturally acceptable belief. They don't have a mental health problem at that point. That's just what's been normal for them for fucking 3,000 years. So you have to look at deviations within that norm. That's not even a religion at that point. That is so ingrained into how you walk, how you talk, how you think, how you fuck, how you do all the things that you do. That yeah, there's no way really to control for that except for looking at the demographics and the voting patterns and the how many churches per square mile are in that area, and then the media that's being consumed and how people dress and all the literature, and that's what people should be looking at, comparing a Christian school to a secular school. I just think that's maybe kind of a red herring-ish in a way. You're just like throwing something up in the air being like, look at this. It's like, I don't fucking believe. I don't know. It's missing something to me.
Okay.
Sorry to rant.
No, that's fine. That's fine. That's what we're all about, right? Yeah. But if you want to rant to us, you can reach us at nonprofits@atheist-community.org, or you can just click one of these links.